Movement takes a huge role in video games. Most of the time when players get to control a character in a game, there's bound to have movement control. Therefore, running, jumping, and performing cool stunts naturally becomes an interesting and enjoyable aspect for the medium. Now put an emphasis on precision, and you get this high difficulty, high reward system where every successful jumping and landing can be satisfying on its own. The drawback, however, is that it can be intimidating to a lot of people. But given how well Super Meat Boy had done in the past in terms of sales, there's definitely an audience to it despite being shown and marketed as very difficult games. Dustforce DX, or simply Dustforce, is a precision platformer developed by a rather small indie team called Hitbox Team. The game have you play as unusually acrobatical janitors who take their job of cleaning the environment very seriously, blending the mundane task of sweeping leaves and dust into platforming. The DX update went live back in 2014, which includes a new soundtrack, extra levels, a new hub world, and a ton of community-made maps. It is worth taking note that I've not played the vanilla version when it first released back in 2012, so I'll only assess the DX version in this review. It didn't take long to realize that Dustforce was designed to be played as fast and as clean as possible. The level design and scoring system are pretty much the proofs. Hence, there's a solid chance they have speedrunning in mind while developing the game, but the problem with that is making a product to attract the speedrun community is not the best idea, because of how niche they are. I stepped into the game without having the desire to be as good as the speedrunners, but the intention of making Dustforce accessible to the much more casual players is very noticeable to me after spending quite an amount of time with the game. 3 components are measured to determine how high you rank in the leaderboard in each individual levels. They are completion, finesse, and time. Completion and finesse are both ranked from D to S depending on how well players perform on each of the category. Completion is the amount of dust players cleared, while finesse takes combo chain into account. So to get the best rank on a level, or the SS rank as they call it, players have to clear all the dust within the level while keeping the combo going all the way from beginning to end, without a single death or a hit from the enemies as well, since they both cut off the combo. Any ranks lower than SS will be placed under them despite having a better finish time, meaning completion and finesse have priorities in the best score category. What's left to determine the ranking after achieving double S is the amount of time spent completing a level. There's also a best time category on the leaderboard, in which only rank players by the finish time, so no matter which category, speed is still integral to the game. I would say that the best score category is how it should be compete in, and I believe it is the more popular one within the community. The levels are clearly designed in a way so that it requires players to traverse through every section of it for the dust. Going best time only will allow players to skip a lot of areas within the level. It can be interesting in its own way, but at the same time shaved off a lot of intricacies of the level design in my opinion. Every directional key are used for character movement, and one button for each light attack, heavy attack, jump, and dash. Attacks are generally used to hit objects covered with dust, quote-unquote enemies. They serve as obstacles that players have to clean in order to get the S rank in completion, and the floating ones that will refresh your jump after wiping them off are part of the platforming as well. However, the utility of the attacks are not exclusive to these objects. Both light and heavy attacks can be used to sweep away dust that are placed across the levels. This not only makes logical sense, but it also opens up another layer of strategy on how to tackle levels. With that, you can sweep dust far from your reach with an attack instead of contacting them with the character model. Doing so will save you time in some part of the level, which is what the game wants you to achieve, completing the levels as quick as possible. This is one of the reasons why I think Dustforce stands out from other titles of its genre. The game contains multi-purpose mechanics that increases layers within the core platforming, all of which contributes to the principle of the game: save time and go fast. The super attack is another example. Upon building up combos and gaining a full meter, players can perform a super attack that cleans up a radius of dust around the character. Most of the time, the last bit of the stage will have you clearing it with a super attack, providing a satisfying finish. But it can be of tactical use as well. Longer stages will provide you enough combos to be able to use super more than once across the level. So optimizing when and where to spend the super is one of the factors on getting a better time. As for casual players, super attack can be used in order to clear some sections they find difficult. So it turns out to be a useful tool that benefits both high and low skill play. Going back to attacks for a bit, hitting a dust object using the heavy attacks will splashes extra dust trails towards the direction you hit it with. The attack itself provides a wider and further hurt box and can clean up dust slightly faster, but at the same time it needs you to be tactical on which direction you hit the target with. Say if you want to avoid extra dust trail, you'll need to attack it towards the direction where there's no platforms or walls, or else you'll need to spend extra time cleaning them off. While momentum is not a huge aspect of the game, there are tricks related with it that provides extra speed if players can perform them successfully. Pressing the dash button after riding down a slope will grant you extra speed for a short period of time. While it is useful, the significance of the speed comes in when players realize the advanced version of it. Dropping from a certain height onto the sweet spot of a slope and pressing the dash button simultaneously will propel your character forward with a lot of momentum. Then, tapping the dash button in a correct rhythm afterwards will allow you to maintain the speed as well. Elements of momentum are kept to a minimum, but they are undoubtedly helpful in terms of gaining speed. Plus, it gives the control an amount of weight, just enough to enhance the overall platforming experience. The windows of these tricks are tight, but they fit into the genre. A precision platformer that not only requires precision jumping and landing, but also in execution. However, these mechanics are hidden away from players, which I think is a little unnecessary. I will talk about that later. Another thing I like about the game is that it does not contain any extra collectibles within levels. I'm not against the idea of having collectibles in a precision platformer. Putting some item in some peculiar spot can serve as hint for players to try different ways to approach a section of a level, but handle it poorly and you'll make players to consciously seek out for them, which is obviously contradicting the spirit of going fast. In Dustforce, you have dust trails sticking on the floor, ledges and ceiling, and that's all. There is no other distraction to break the main objective. Also, due to their placement, you intuitively know where to reach next as you move onwards, which creates a good sense of flow intended by the level designer. More interestingly, there is no moving saw blades and moving platforms throughout every level in the game. Nothing in the level that will stop you from advancing, except if you want to take a break or prepare yourself for a tough jump. But of course, halting movement is discouraged by the combo system, as combos will drop if you stop getting dust within a several seconds. I suppose there are dust enemies that moves in a pattern, but their positions are always placed in a way so that players can clear them quickly the moment when they approach it. Moving dust in the air will move in a pattern so they will intertwine each other to allow one sweep clear. All aspects were taken into account so that levels can be done without stopping the players at all if they can perform every movement accordingly. As I've mentioned, Dustforce excels in not only the precision platforming but also the layers of utility its mechanics contains. They allow players to optimize every little bit just to save a fraction of a second, and of course, every fraction counts if you are competing with speed. Creativity plays a part too in the process of routing the levels. Consider the game has been out for some years now, the strategies used by the top players in each level are generally the most optimized ones, but they are no doubt difficult to pull off at the same time. Despite that, new learners are still able to route out and master their own paths to do the levels better than they did initially. Might I say beating your own record is the best way to improve your skills. There is always room for improvements if you are willing to dwell deeper into the mechanics and the levels themselves. Hitting restart lets you retry the level from the very beginning almost immediately, thanks to the lack of loading and the quick countdown. For a precision platformer that will undoubtedly cost unnumbered retries, this is a very important feature to have. Players want to immediately get another go after a mistake. A loading or any other delays will only cause further frustration. Oddly enough, I don't think an immediate reset any quicker than this one is beneficial to the players. If the player character spawns in without any downtime at all, there will be no time for players to regain their footings before another try. Due to that, it may cause fatigue if players fail several effortless attempts at once. I think the 1 second or so downtime for the countdown is necessary for the long run, same goes with the black screen before you load into a checkpoint. Any quicker may backfire players' motivation. That may just be me though. I can understand some people might prefer an immediate reset with no load time at all, but for me, this is quick enough to not cause any frustration throughout my experience. There is also an option to disable checkpoints so that players who are trying to get the double S rank will always restart from the beginning whenever they die. This goes to show how much considerations have put in by the dev to ease the frustration of the players in any way possible, which is very much appreciated. While that is plausible, other elements in the game might require more transparency, such as the character's attributes. There are 4 playable janitors to choose from before entering each level. Every one of them has different traits of their own, even though the game did not specifically reveal them to the players. Play them enough and you'll feel the differences by yourself. But I would rather the game explicitly show their perks instead. Leaving confusion to the players may inflict doubt, and as a game that requires precision, making it clear for the players should be the priority, much less they are the character in control. A few descriptive words should suffice. Let the players focus on the platforming, get better, and nothing else. There's one particular stage that requires a specific advanced technique to get past if the player decides to tackle it with Dustforce. Other than that, every other levels can be done by any of the janitors. This exception is really unfortunate in my opinion. If the game decided to have characters with different perks during development, I am positive the developers had made a clear point that none of the levels will be unclearable with a certain character. The character perks should play into players' preferences and not hinders them in certain levels, which to be fair they have actually achieved that. But in this particular case with Dustforce, it left a margin of error in their part. I should clarify again that you can still beat the level with Dustforce, given if you have already realized how to perform an advanced technique called spike jump on a specific part of the level. But I think it is unreasonable to expect players to learn an optional technique that is not showcased in any other form. I have more to say on the matter of advanced technique in just a minute. Still, the fact that it is still possible to get past with Dustforce softens my criticism on the matter. The game lets you access each level in a fairly large hub world called the Nexus. Though after unlocking the levels, you can access them again via a list in the first screen before entering the Nexus. It is interesting in the sense that the hub world is a huge level itself. It serves as a playground for players to warm up before playing, but there's also another function to it. Some harder levels are located in certain spots that require players to execute some advanced techniques in order to reach them, but as I said, I think this is a tad bit unreasonable. You could say that gating away these levels with a harder travel course is to test players' understanding on the mechanics before they challenge the harder rooms. But I disagree on that. It is harsh to expect casual players to discover obscure advanced techniques without looking up on the internet. Furthermore, the techniques needed to reach these levels are not required in order to complete the levels themselves, so it doesn't make any sense for them to be gating tools. Giving them the benefit of the doubt, I would say that these obstacles are tools to push new players towards realizing the potential of the base mechanics. After all, they are nothing new but require tighter execution of what's been taught. Then again, because of that, they take the risk of locking a bunch of levels from the players. I don't think gatekeeping these levels like this is necessary. In order to unlock further levels, getting the SS rank is unavoidable. Levels are locked behind different colored locks based on difficulty tiers, starting from lockless, bronze, silver to gold. Keys for the higher tier levels are granted depending on the ranks players have scored in the lower tier levels. For example, fully unlocking one single silver key requires players to get a double S in a bronze level. In my opinion, the system is a little too strict. Getting any ranks lower than SS will only grant you a partial of the full points, as shown by a bar, towards unlocking a key. These points can be accumulated by playing other levels, but even so, missing any one of them is not an option because the ratio is one perfect score to one key. I can see how this system serves as a skill check on players yet again, and speedrunning the game will be much more interesting due to the perfection it requires. But leaving as such harms those who do not have the desire on getting the perfect score, resulting on locking content away from them. It's another double-edged situation, but it seems like the developers are leaning towards the speedrunners more here. Personally, I think granting access to harder levels will cause no harm to either group of players. Speedrunners should be able to monitor their own double S scores without problem, and casual players can get a taste on harder levels only to realize they are not up for the challenge yet. I think a soft fix is to lower the requirements for the keys. Double A is a much more feasible goal for acquiring a key. Anyway, I dabble too much on this matter alone. It's just a piece of my mind that I can't help but to share. Let's move on to something else. There are 4 different biomes throughout the entire game, which are Garden, Mansion, City, and the Science Lab. While they are mostly aesthetic changes, having more visual varieties keep things fresh as you play through the game. All of them fit the theme of the game perfectly as well, giving a sense that these competent janitors are hired everywhere and they are capable of cleaning just any foul places. A note to take here is that each versions of the dust and the platforms within the area are very distinctive with each other by color choices. The dust never blend with the area to cause confusion. You can easily identify their placements due to their eye-catching colors and trace along them as you run and jump, which is one of the key components of creating fluidity in the levels. Personally, I like the first biome the most because cleaning the leaves has this pleasant wind effect on them. Another component that are mostly taken for granted is the camera movement, because of how well it moves along the levels. Most of the time, the character in control will be centered as you go through the level, but when the more complex part of the level approaches, the camera will either zoom out or move ahead a little to prepare players for the sections ahead. It also did a great job guiding the players where they should go as they play. By framing the camera slightly ahead of the character, players instinctively know where to approach next after they have cleaned the dust in sight, without having to stop advancing. I have gone back and watched my replays to see how well the camera were placed, and I noticed there's almost not an instant where there's no dust within the visible frame. After clearing the dust around me, it is only instinct to approach where the dust appears within the frame, be it located at any direction. If you're watching the video, you'll definitely notice it by now. After realizing its brilliant positioning, it is apparent that the camera is also an important factor contributing to the platforming flow, together with the dust placements. I imagine lacking any of these 2 factors will drastically reduce the flow that is predominant in Dustforce. There's also a combat focused level in each of the biomes, making a total of 4. These levels put players in a closed room filled with enemies. There's no finish line, instead, clearing the last target in the room ends the level. In my opinion, these are the weakest levels just because how they stray away from the usual start to finish formula. Platforming becomes secondary, and tough routing plus a little agility to avoid enemies' attack are the tests in these levels. To be fair, they kept these levels to a minimum, which is reasonable. They offer a different challenge, but the goal of clearing a level as quick as possible still remains. The soundtracks of the game are soothing and chilly. Beats are nothing too heavy that'll evoke a sense of rush, which for a game that demands speed, you may think it's an odd choice. But really, the motif of speed Dustforce is trying to present is not the pushy, brute force kind of approach. Rather, it's the smooth and clean ones. Hence, the tracks complement the gameplay and the atmosphere really well. Listening to them helps to fan away the frustration of failing a little because of how pleasing they sound. There is nothing too striking that'll catch your attention away from the gameplay. But don't get me wrong, they are wonderfully sound and definitely deserves your attention. It is also the kind of soundtracks that are good on its own apart from the game. I can't help myself but to think they are a great pair with a walk outside at the park during a cloudy day. What draws me into the game most, aside from the speed and flow focus within the platforming, is the theme of the game, the janitors themselves. Watching them being absolutely serious with their job, cleaning their environment with style all the way is fascinating. The contrast of taking a mundane job very seriously evokes an enticing attitude. These guys own their job, they have no shortage of charm and they are not afraid of showing it. The title of the game, Dustforce, echoes the spirit as well. It represents a group of professionals, experts in their field, always ready to rock their job. The simple, minimalistic design of the characters offers a clean and stylistic look, and thanks to the unsaturated look, the emphasis on their animation really pops when you are jumping and sliding across the level, telegraphing your action properly. The icing on the cake is the color-coded uniforms that are reminiscing of Sentai shows, bringing a full circle back to the name of the game. Overall, the theme is very well done and cohesive, and it was what caught me into the game at the first place. In some cases, the scores of online leaderboards in games can be so unbelievable and are questionable, leading to suspicion on cheating. But thanks to the replay feature in Dustforce, proofs will be stored and shared. The replay feature is very well implemented in-game. It is only one click away from assessing other players' attempt. Furthermore, these clips shared by default can be used as references for other players to learn the level better. It really is an excellent tool for everyone in terms of self-improving, but I can't shake off the tiny little downside of it out of my mind, so I might as well address it. There is certainly no doubt most of the top players are speedrunners, and having to see every records are faster than you twice or more right after completing a tough level can be discouraging to some players, making newcomers' effort seems futile. Personally, I think it's not necessary to default the showing of the leaderboards at the top bracket. Maybe display the rankings of those who are close to the player's ranking, of those who they can compete within their skill level up front, like the secondary list under here, and just let the curiosity guide them to check out the top list themselves. Doing so will probably soften the blow of discouragement. On the other side of the same coin, however, showing the leaderboard this way helps to spark interest on speedrunning. Players who have worked hard for the sport also get the fame they deserve by having their name shown. And to easily watch the most optimal way to play the level is convenient to those who are planning to better themselves. It definitely has its ups and downs, and it is understandable why they had decided to display the leaderboard as such. Either way, the easy access of clips is a great feature to any players. Totally worth the hassle implementing that into the game. Although precision platformer is an intimidating genre, I will still recommend Dustforce to anyone who likes any platformer at all. While it requires an extent of mastery on the mechanics to play it in the high level, the satisfaction of playing the game in the intermediate level is still rewarding, and of course, how high you want to set the bar is depending on your likings. I would say getting double S on every level is a pretty challenging feat to start with, but take your time as you go. The soundtrack will be there for you. Though, I would suggest check out the advanced tutorial video by Ponifex right after getting used of the basics. Link in the description below. There is plenty of content waiting to be experienced too. Aside from the main levels, there is over 100 community-made levels waiting to be challenged, a level editor for you to create and upload your own levels, a local multiplayer mode where you can pit your skills against each other in several game modes. I will put a link of the multiplayer mode in the description, so check it out if you are interested. Lastly, the community of the game is still pretty active and friendly, just one more reason to pick up the game. I really like Dustforce as a precision platformer in the sense that it doesn't have bumps to stop players from going fast. The levels can be completed by a wide range of skills too, and with mechanics layers that allow players to strategize how they can squeeze as many seconds out as possible, it exceeds more than just jumping at the right time or the right spot. The obvious commitment towards speed and fluidity reflects from its design, and I adore it as such. In addition on that, tools provided by the developers to assist players, such as the checkpoint disabler and the replay feature, is an effort worth noting in games development. Dustforce is still challenging nonetheless. With every success players pull off, there is still room for improvement ready to be filled, and the enjoyment towards mastery is worth experiencing. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more of my reviews in the future. Follow me on Twitter as I'll occasionally tweet about games and anime if you're up for those. Check out my other reviews too if you have the time to spend. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.